Good day, grade 12. Today we are doing the last lesson for chapter 8, and today's topic is conflict management. Right, the different causes of conflict in the workplace. Now, very important, you must be able to identify the causes of conflict from a given scenario. So you are going to be given a scenario and you have to identify what is busy causing the conflict in that scenario. The first possible cause of conflict is differences in backgrounds or cultures or values, beliefs or language. I'm going to discuss this just now. Also, limited business resources, different opinions, different goals or objectives, personality differences, lack of trust among workers, ill-managed stress, unrealistic expectations, poor leadership or administrative procedures, different opinions, confusion about scheduling or deadlines, misconduct or acceptable behavior, intense competitiveness, ignoring rules and procedures, poor communications, unclear responsibilities, distracted by personal objectives, constant changes in the workplace, unfair treatment or favoritism or discrimination, and an unfair workload. Okay, just again, you must identify conflict from a given scenario, the cause of conflict from a given scenario. Okay, if we just look at it in more detail, when there's lack of communication between management and workers, that can lead to a misunderstanding and can become very destructive. So if there is not proper communication, one of the causes of conflict is lack of proper communication. For example, when management gave instructions to workers and those instructions were not clear. Obviously, the workers think they're supposed to be doing one thing and the management actually expects them to do something else. So a misunderstanding is obviously going to happen there. They do not understand what management actually wants. And then obviously the workers are not going to do as management expects them to do because they don't understand what they are supposed to be doing. And that is going to cause conflict. Management is going to come in and say, why was this job not done in X, Y, and way? And the workers didn't know that it was expected like that. Okay, so that is the first cause of conflict. Ignoring rules and procedures can also result in disagreements and conflict because tasks may not be completed according to the specifications. Okay, again, if there are rules and procedures, then everybody needs to stick to those rules and procedures. Okay, so for example, if in a business, a worker wants, one of the office workers needs a new computer because the computer broke, right? There's rules and procedures. She can't just go and order another computer. There's procedures that has to be followed. For example, maybe she needs to get 3 different quotes and she needs to ask permission from the admin manager before she places her order. And now she doesn't do that. She just quickly orders one online and next thing the invoice comes and this laptop has to be paid for. Obviously, the admin manager is going to come and confront her and say, listen, you did not follow the procedures. You did not have permission to do this. You did not get your 3 quotes. It's going to cause disagreement and conflict. Sometimes management and workers may just have different personalities and backgrounds. Remember, as soon as we are in a business, we are throwing together people with different kinds of personalities and different beliefs and opinions, and people are not always going to agree. It doesn't even have to be management and workers. It can be different workers in a department, has different personalities and backgrounds. So somebody might be really extroverted and he likes to talk loudly and make lots of noise, and a colleague might like actually to work in silence. All right, so obviously that is a breeding ground then for conflict. People are not always going to get along. If people have different values or level of knowledge and skills or experience, obviously that can create conflict as well. If your more experienced workers just expect everybody to know what they know, because they know something, they expect everybody else to know that something as well. Obviously, when they give an instruction and they expect people to have the knowledge to follow up on that instruction and people don't, obviously it is going to cause conflict as well. Okay, different values, for example. If, and it is unprofessional, right? But if there's a person in the organization that have values in terms of they don't like swearing, they don't like when people swear around them, they believe it's wrong, and then in the same office you have somebody that can rival your worst swearing rapper, and he drops the F-bomb every second word or whatever. First of all, it is unprofessional, right? But it's a difference in values. The one person think it's okay, the other person doesn't think it's okay. It is bound to create conflict at some point. If there's no cooperation between your internal and external stakeholders, so if, for example, a new project has been initiated and workers are expected to, for example, come in and work extra hours, or they're supposed to do certain things, and some of the workers just don't buy into this new project and they just don't agree with the methods that we are using, and then they just don't cooperate. They don't do as they are told because they just don't agree with what they are told, what they were supposed to be doing. If people are not working together towards the same objective, it is going to cause conflict. If there's lack of recognition for good work, we said the other day that your team leader must always show that he must give recognition for great work. If somebody comes with a good idea or somebody did something wonderful, he should thank that person and commend that person for a job well done. If people are constantly doing their best and they're working hard and they feel that they are not being appreciated and that their efforts are not being seen, it is also going to create conflict at some point. People like to be recognized for what they do. Lack of employee development can increase their frustration levels. Okay, very important also is that if we expect a person to do the same job, day in, day out, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, people are going to get bored. Okay, they're going to feel that there's no challenges for them at work. Or if they are not 100% sure what they are supposed to do, their skills level is not really high enough, and they keep making mistakes, but we don't help them, we don't correct them. Okay, so they keep repeating the same mistake, and nobody ever comes to them and says, listen, this is what you are doing wrong. Let me help you. Let me show you what the right way is. So there's no skills development. We're not developing them. We are not enhancing their skills, which means they keep making the same mistake over and over. And every single time they make the mistake, it is going to cause conflict because the manager expects him to know how to fix the mistake, but he doesn't, and nobody bothers to tell him. All right, conflict waiting to happen. If there's unfair disciplinary procedures, you yourself will know. Now, if you feel in a classroom situation that the teacher favors a certain person, if one person, if Pity doesn't do his work, the teacher's like, it's okay, Pity, it's not the end of the world. But when Kwesi doesn't do his work, Kwesi gets demerits, and Kwesi's parents gets an email, and Kwesi's just all over the coals all the time. Favoritism, that creates conflict. Kwesi and Pity, they're going to fight. Kwesi is not going to be happy that Pity is the favored one. If we have disciplinary procedures, we have to apply them equally and fairly to everybody. All right, the minute there's favoritism, there's going to be conflict. Nepotism, right? If I'm the managing director and my son, I bring in my son because now he's going to be the new intern in our business because he's my son. Obviously, his colleagues, it's going to create conflict. They're going to tell him all the time, you don't even belong here, you don't have the skills to be here, the only reason you're here is because your mother is the managing director. It is going to cause problems. All right, for the workers. All right, they don't like to see favoritism. If there's no support from management with regard to supplying the necessary resources, so if workers are supposed to, in the factory, they're supposed to double their production, right? That is the target that we give them. And we do not give them more raw materials, obviously, they cannot perform their job. We are not giving them the necessary resources. At the end of the week, we're going to go to them and say, like, hey, why have we not doubled production? And they're going to get up on their hind legs and they're going to say, we didn't have enough resources. All right. So management needs to support workers in terms of supplying the resources that they need to do their job. When there's lack of clarity regarding employees' roles and responsibilities, that could result in team members not effectively performing their tasks as expected because they don't know what is expected of them. All right, so if people do not understand what their role is and what exactly they are in charge of and what exactly their responsibilities are, it's going to mean that if they don't know what their job are, what they're supposed to be doing, they cannot do their job if we don't tell them exactly what to do. So we can't give vague instructions. All right, employees need to know exactly, this is exactly what you are supposed to do every week or every month or whatever, so that there can be no confusion in terms of their responsibilities. Right, there's also constant change. That is going to cause instability. Most people don't like change. Some people obviously handle change a lot better than others. You will know. This whole new way of teaching, it's weird. And not everybody is taking to it as well as others. Some people are coping with it. Some people are enjoying it. Some people do not like this change. They don't like this new thing. So people might have less patience. They don't understand what is happening. They don't like change. Obviously, that is going to cause conflict in the business as well. If employees start asking, but why do we always need to change? Why are we changing this again? This has always worked in the past. Why are we changing the system now? That is going to cause conflict. Right, different leadership styles also can have a cause in conflict. Okay, for example, when there's an autocratic manager and workers would prefer a more democratic manager, it is going to cause conflict. If an autocratic manager constantly just barks out instructions and you will do that and you must do that and you go do that, and he does not even ask the workers for their opinion. All right, so if you are a more democratic kind of person and you get an autocratic manager, at some point it is going to cause conflict because you are, as the worker, going to feel that your inputs are not valued at all and nobody listens to you and you don't agree with the autocratic manager's instructions. You are going to say so at some point, and that is where the conflict is going to come. When there's unrealistic deadlines and heavy workloads, that leads to stress, and stress leads to conflict. All right. If a manager gives you a deadline and say, right, you are going to do X, Y, and Z by tomorrow, and it's a heavy workload, it's work that normally would take 2 weeks to complete, he wants you to complete in 1 day, obviously that is going to cause stress for the worker. The worker is not going to be able to cope with the workload, and that is going to result in conflict, right? The manager is going to come in tomorrow and say, right, where's all that work that I asked of you? And you're going to say, well, I couldn't do it. It's 2 weeks worth of work that you wanted me to do in 24 hours. It is impossible. And the conflict is going to result. If there's lack of agreement on mutual matters, like remuneration or working hours, right? If the workplace expects workers to work until 5 o'clock and you do not want to work until 5 o'clock, obviously you're going to tell them, but I don't want to work until 5 o'clock, and they're going to tell you, but you have to work until 5 o'clock, and that is going to cause a lack of agreement. People don't agree, there's going to be conflict. Right, also very important, unhealthy competition or inter-team rivalry. That can also cause your workers to lose focus on the team targets. Okay, so within a team, if there are members within a team that are competing with each other, they are one team, they've got one objective, but within this team, they are constantly competing with one another. Now everybody's trying to come up, I want to come up with a new idea, or I want to do this first, or I want to complete my job first. If there's lots of competition, strong competition, they might actually lose focus of what they are trying to do. Each individual team member is not there to reach their own personal goal. They are supposed to work together and reach the team's targets. So if there's team members that are constantly losing, they are not getting the good ideas, they're not coming up with the brilliant things, they are going to start to feel incompetent, and they're going to feel that they don't belong in this team and they're just dragging the team down, and that obviously is going to cause conflict. As soon as they say that, well, it doesn't help that I'm here, I'm not even going to do my job because I can't do it as well as the other person in any case, that is going to cause the whole team to fail. All right, and it's going to cause conflict then, because then some people are doing their job and some people are not. All right, competition is a good thing sometimes, but it can be unhealthy. Right, if that competition becomes destructive, then it is no longer a good thing. Then it's going to cause conflict. If there's lack of commitment or people are distracted by their personal objectives, that is going to obviously mean that they are not going to do their job well. All right, so if in a team there is a commitment that everybody's going to come and work this Saturday so we can, reach our objective, and then there's one person that says, no, I'm sorry, I do not work on Saturdays. On a Saturday, I go and I play golf. All right, so they're distracted by their personal objectives. They are bringing their personal life into their work environment, which means that while they are at work, they are not focusing on their work. They are distracted by their home situation. All right. Distracted by personal objectives, as I said, you lose focus on the task, and you can possibly distract others as well who are trying to do their job really well. All right, so if you, for example, are fighting with your husband, now you're at work and you're fighting with your husband, in your head your focus is on the fight with your husband and what are you going to say to him tonight when you see him again, and then you're texting him and whatever. In the meantime, you're at work and you should be doing your job. All right, so you're not focusing on your job, you are focusing on other stuff, which means your job is not going to get done, and you are letting the other team members down by not doing your job. They might be waiting for you to finish something so they can carry on with their job, and now you are just distracted and you are not doing what you are supposed to do, which means if you don't do your job, they also cannot do their job, and then the conflict is going to come in. Right, if we look at steps in conflict resolution, very important that you do not confuse conflict resolution procedures with grievance procedures or the steps in problem solving. So be absolutely clear on what you are studying here. Right, so if we follow the steps in conflict resolution, remember anytime in an exam when you have to list steps of whatever, remember you can list those steps in any order. You don't have to remember them in the correct order. It obviously makes more sense if you do, it's logical if you do, but it doesn't matter. You will not lose marks if you mess them up. All right, so first of all, what needs to happen is we need to acknowledge that there is in actual fact conflict in the workplace. Doesn't matter that doesn't help that we bury our heads in the sand like an ostrich and pretend that the conflict doesn't happen. Then we're all living happily ever after. Then we're never going to resolve that conflict if we don't even admit that it's there. So the first step is we actually have to acknowledge and admit that we have a conflict situation at work. Then it's very important to identify the cause of the conflict, because you cannot address the conflict situation unless you know what is causing it. So it's very important here to evaluate the situation objectively, to not get personally involved. You have to identify objectively as an outsider to identify what is causing this conflict. If we don't know the cause, we can't give the medicine to fix it. Right, we can arrange pre-negotiations where the workers will be allowed to state their case separately. Obviously, we have a situation where 2 or 3 or 5 or 20 workers are in a conflict situation, right? So those people involved in the conflict situation, as the manager or the person that is now resolving this conflict, we have to organize pre-negotiations. We get everybody together, all the conflicting parties together, and each person will be allowed to state their case separately. All right, because obviously we need to get different sides of the story. A time and place can be arranged for negotiations where all employees involved are present. This is important. If you don't have all the conflicting parties together at the same time, they're obviously going to think that, but what did you and that other guy discuss? Now, what did you say about me behind my back? That kind of thing, okay? So it's very important at these pre-negotiations that all the people involved in the conflict situation are actually involved so that they can hear what the others are saying. Right, everybody gets a turn to state what their case is, what their feelings are and what their opinion is and why the conflict is there. But everybody needs to hear what the others are saying so that it's open and transparent. Then you need to arrange a meeting between conflicting parties and management. Okay, so now you're going to bring management into this. You make your intentions for intervention clear so that parties involved may feel at ease. Now you're going to explain to them that the reason for this meeting is because we believe that there's a conflict situation. We think we have identified the cause, and the intention behind this meeting is to resolve this conflict. All right, so that everybody at the meeting knows what the meeting is about and they don't have to stress. All right, they want to feel at ease. They want to know, okay, we're going to resolve this conflict now. The purpose, they need to know why they are there. All right, and as I said, each party has the opportunity to express his own opinions and feelings. And then obviously your conflicting parties can see that there are different views. That person believes that, I believe this, that person feels that I did this and I didn't intend for it to be taken like that. All right, but everybody individually gets an opportunity to talk about his opinion and how he feels about this conflict situation so that all conflicting parties can hear the other speak and see it from the other side. Okay, sometimes it helps to see it from a different perspective. Then we're going to analyze the causes of conflict by breaking it down into different parts. Remember, it's not always just one thing that is causing the conflict. Sometimes it's a build-up of many different things. So we need to find any and all causes of conflict, break it down exactly to evaluate the situation objectively. Now, we're not going to accuse anybody of anything. We are just going to try and figure out what is causing this disagreement. Right, any blame shifting must be avoided. Remember, we are trying to resolve the conflict. To try and throw around blame is going to make the situation worse. As I said, it is not to be a case of I'm saying, yes, but Jannie said this, and Kwesi did this, and this person, no blame shifting. I explain from my side, and every person will explain it from their perspective. We are not blaming anybody at this stage. Everybody must make a joint effort to understand from the other person's side and think about it objectively. Right, then we are going to help to direct the conflicting parties towards finding solutions. So again, once we know what is causing this conflict, now we have to address the conflict and say, right, this cause of conflict, how are we going to remove this thing that is causing the conflict? And we are going to help these conflicting parties to come up with different solutions. So we brainstorm possible ways of resolving the conflict. As I said, everybody has input. The solution is not necessarily going to come from the mediator or the manager. All the conflicting parties have to work together to try and resolve the conflict. So there will be a brainstorming way. What can we possibly do? Different suggestions are going to be coming up as to how we can address this conflict. Right, conflicting parties are going to agree on the criteria to evaluate the alternatives. In other words, how are we going to decide which solution is the best one? Okay, measurable criteria that we are going to evaluate all our different solutions against to decide which one is the best one. So we have to say, like, what is our criteria? What are we going to look at for in a solution? Right, it must be cheap to implement, whatever, it must be objective, it must be whatever, okay? But what is the criteria that we are going to use to decide whether the solution is workable or not? Then the best possible solution is selected and implemented, obviously after we have evaluated against these criteria. Okay, every single solution we have, we measure it against this criteria, and then we're going to say, right, measured against this criteria, which one seems to be the best possible solution? And once we have selected a solution, we need to implement that solution. Then we have to provide opportunities for parties to agree on the best solution. Obviously, this is key, right? We need to convince all the conflicting parties to agree on which solution is going to work best. All of them have to buy into the solution, otherwise it's not going to work. Then it's important that we follow up on the implementation of the solution. So whatever solution we decided on, as the manager or as the mediator of the conflict, I obviously have to make sure that when we have agreed upon a solution, that it is actually implemented and that people are sticking to whatever the implementation was. All right. So if, for example, it was a case of, right, people are distracted by personal objectives, And the solution that we came up with was, right, no cell phone policy. Okay, you can take your cell phone out in tea time or in lunchtime, but furthermore, there's no interaction with your cell phone. You need to focus at work. Right, if that was the solution, we have to follow up and see and make sure that people are not on their cell phones during working hours because it's distracting them from their work, and then other people have to step up and they have to do more work because one person is sitting on his phone all the time. All right, so whatever the solution was, we need to make sure that that solution is being implemented by everybody. We have to monitor progress to ensure the conflict has been resolved. Okay, so we need to monitor to see that there isn't still conflict, okay, that we actually did resolve the conflict. If those workers are still growling at each other all the time, conflict was not resolved, then we need to go back to the drawing board and we need to start over. We need to find a different solution. Okay, we have to make sure that the conflict was actually resolved. All right, expertise on handling conflict may be sourced from outside the business. So if nobody inside the business itself is equipped to deal with this conflict situation, or they have tried and they have failed, they can bring in an outside expert, a person obviously that is well trained in the field of conflict resolution. There are those people. They will be better equipped to actually deal with a very severe conflict situation. So it is possible that we might have to bring in a person from outside that obviously we are going to have to pay, but that person will be absolutely objective. All right, because he doesn't know anybody in this conflict situation. There's going to be no personal feelings. So that is totally objective. Just a reminder again, do not confuse conflict resolution procedures, that is what we did now. Don't confuse that with grievance procedures. We're going to look at that just now. Or the steps in problem solving. We did that in the previous lesson. Right, what is the differences between a grievance and conflict? A grievance is when an employee is unhappy or he has a complaint about something that happened in the workplace. All right. So a grievance is just when an employee feels mistreated. Now, he's not happy with something that happened at work. He's not 100% happy with whatever, a colleague's behavior, the way that a manager spoke to him, the job that he was allocated to do. He has a complaint. There's something that he's not liking. Conflict is where there's a clash of opinions, ideas, or viewpoints. All right. So a conflict is a step up from a grievance. All right. If I am unhappy about my workload and I sit sulking in my corner, that is a grievance. When I confront my manager and I tell him, listen, I think my workload is too heavy and he disagrees with me, that is conflict. Okay. Now there's two different viewpoints. It's not just my feelings. It is a clash of different feelings. All right, so grievance is when an individual or a group of people have a work-related issue. Okay, so grievances only happens at the workplace. You can't have a grievance against your mother because she makes you do the dishes, right? A grievance is something that arises from a workplace incident. Conflict is a disagreement between two or more parties. Again, grievance is just one person feeling mistreated. Conflict is if he actually is going to talk to somebody about it and there's a disagreement between two or more people. Examples of issues that can cause a grievance at the workplace, it can be that people feel discriminated against, okay? That favoritism, unfair treatment, poor working conditions, my working hours, I'm not happy with my working hours, I'm not happy with changes that is being made, okay? A conflict, issues causing conflict can be a lack of trust. I don't trust my colleagues. It can be a miscommunication. My manager gave me an instruction, I misunderstood, so I didn't do what he expected me to do, and now there's conflict. A personality clash. People just sometimes they just don't like each other. All of you are going to be able to think of at least one person that you really just don't like. And there's no reason that you don't like this person. You just don't like him. There's a personality clash. Sometimes it happens between a teacher and a student as well. All right. Could be different values. I don't like swearing. I don't approve of swearing. Another person doesn't care. All right. and that is going to cause conflict if there's that confrontation. What is the correct procedures for dealing with grievances? Okay, this is now again, I said there in the top, do not confuse conflict resolution procedures. We did that just now. What we're going to do now is the grievance procedure. So when there's conflict, how do we deal with the conflict? That's the previous slides. When there's a grievance, how do we follow? What procedures do we follow if we have a grievance? Okay, first of all, the employee that has a grievance, that is unhappy, must verbally report the grievance to his direct manager, who needs to resolve this issue within 3 to 5 working days. So if I feel that my workload is not fair, I'm going to verbally report this to my manager. I'm going to go and set up a meeting with my manager. I'm going to tell him, listen, I do not believe that my workload is fair. Then that manager has 3 to 5 working days to deal with this grievance. If the employee and the supervisor are not able to resolve this grievance, now after 3 to 5 working days, he could not come up with a solution, then the employee is going to take it to the next level of management. So step 1, you report to your direct manager, your direct supervisor. If he cannot resolve the grievance, you take it up to the next level of management. Then the employee may move to a more formal process where the grievance must be in writing. All right, so if your verbal reporting of the grievance was not successful and management could not resolve your issue, you are now making it more serious by lodging a written grievance. Now, anything written is more serious than a verbal thing. All right, so either he's going to write his grievance out on a piece of paper or in an email or whatever in writing, or if they have a prescribed form, he can complete a grievance form. The employee must then receive a written reply in response to a written grievance. Okay, so if you have lodged a grievance in writing, the employee have a right to expect a written reply as well, not a verbal reply, verbal reporting, verbal solution. But grievance in writing, you want a written reply as well. Then there must be a grievance hearing with all relevant parties present. All right, so if I said that I am unhappy, I have verbally reported to the managers that a colleague is sexually harassing me at the workplace, he's making inappropriate comments, and now there's a grievance hearing, me as the aggrieved party and the person that I'm accusing must be there with management so that we can obviously deal with this grievance. There must be minutes of the meeting because that obviously is proof that this meeting took place. All right, so whatever happens in this meeting must be contained in the minutes of that meeting, and any resolution passed, so any solution that we can come up with, anybody saying that, okay, in future this is what is going to happen, that must be recorded on that formal grievance form. Right, there on that form where I made the complaint. On there, we attach the minutes of the meeting, and any resolution or solution that we can come up with has to be attached to that also. If the employee is not satisfied with the solution or with how this was handled at the grievance hearing, then the matter can go to the highest level of management. Okay, and this is the highest it can go in the organization itself. So after the grievance hearing, if the sexual harassment, for example, doesn't stop, now he keeps making lewd comments and glaring at me and whatever, and I still feel uncomfortable, then I'm going to say, listen, I'm not satisfied that this grievance actually has been dealt with. I am now going to go to the highest level of management. Then top management will arrange a meeting again with the aggrieved party, me, and the person that I am accusing of sexual harassment, for example, okay, and also my direct supervisor. Now, everybody that was involved in the grievance process up to this point should be at this meeting with top management. Again, there should be minutes of the meeting as proof. It should be recorded, typed up and filed, and the outcome must also be recorded on the formal grievance form. It's proof that there was a meeting. There's minutes of a meeting, and any outcome, any resolution, again, must be recorded. It must be written down because then it's proof that it happened. If the employee still is not satisfied, then obviously after top management in the organization itself, there is not much more that you can do then. Then it will refer the matter to the CCMA. Okay, the CCMA will then make a final decision on this matter. This is now where we take it outside of the organization. Obviously, if I also feel that the meeting inside the workplace was not really objective and I don't feel heard, not satisfied, if I go to the CCMA, obviously that is totally objective again, because it's not anybody that has anything to do with the business itself, doesn't know me, doesn't know the person that I'm accusing of something. Okay, so it's an objective decision. Then the matter can be referred to the Labour Court of Appeal if the employee is not satisfied with the decision taken by the CCMA. So once again, if the CCMA tells me, you're imagining these things, there's no sexual harassment, shut up and do your work. If I still feel that I have not been heard, I can go to the Labour Court and then appeal the CCMA's decision. And obviously, if the Labour Court still says, shut up and do your work, I need to do that. Okay? You cannot go higher than the Labour Court of Appeal. Again, do not confuse conflict resolution procedures with grievance procedures. I'm saying this very often because it is a common mistake in exams. Make sure what they're asking. Are they asking conflict resolution? Are they asking you the grievance procedure? Or are they asking you the steps of problem solving? Okay? Distinguish between those. It's important. Right, the last little thing that we're just going to look at quickly is how to deal with different personalities. Some people have difficult personalities. It's not always easy to get along with them. All right, the first one is the complainer. Then we have the person that over-agrees, always agreeing with everybody. Then we have the indecisive person that can't seem to make a decision ever. We have the negative person, the negative Nelly that's always saying it's not going to work, this is not going to work, this is a stupid idea. We have the expert, we all know one of those, they always know everything and whatever you know, they know better. We have the quiet people, the introverted people that don't ever seem to say much. And then we have those aggressive people that will attack people, for example, verbally, if they don't agree with what they say. Right. Now, you must be able to identify difficult personalities again from a given scenario, and you need to be able to suggest a strategy to deal with each of those difficult personalities. Now, you're going to deal with each of those types of people differently. Right, so how to deal with a complainer. First of all, you will have to listen to his complaints. Okay, you're listening to everything he says, you're listening to this person when he's complaining, but you do not acknowledge them. All right. You listen when the person complains, but you don't say, yes, ooh, I agree, yes, ooh, it's hard, it's really tough. Don't acknowledge them, listen to them, and then interrupt the situation and move to a problem-solving process. So while he's busy complaining, you give him some time to complain, and at some point you stop him. You say, right, how are we going to solve this problem? I hear you, I hear that you have an issue. Let's move to the problem-solving process. Let's solve your problem for you. Don't let the person just complain and complain and complain, because the world will end and that person will still be complaining. Interrupt the situation and tell him, right, let's solve your problem. The indecisive person, the person that cannot now make a choice, we have to guide them through the different alternatives, and we have to stay in control. We have to control the situation and emphasize the importance of making a decision, right? Tell him, yes, I know it's hard to make a decision, but we have to make a decision. Right, you've got 5 alternatives, let's eliminate one. Let's start with eliminating one, okay? Now there's 4 left, right, let's eliminate another one. All right, so you're helping them to make the decision or to solve their problem. You're not making a decision for them, you are guiding them to make their own decision. All right. Then the over-agreeer, the person that just agrees with everybody. Obviously, with this person, you need to be very firm and don't allow them to make promises that they cannot keep. All right, and follow up on their actions, because if he says, Yes, I agree, ne? I agree. We should be doing X, Y, and Z. Yes, yes, I agree. We must work overtime, ne? Then you have to make sure that, he's there. He's there to work his overtime. He's not going to make a promise and then not keep that promise. If he's committed and he's agreed to something, he has to make sure that he commits to that decision, and we have to follow up to make sure that he's keeping his commitments. The negative, Nelly, we need to be firm and we do not allow them to draw us into their negativity. All right, because then if he's negative and I'm negative, we're going to sit and be negative, negative, negative together. Ne? Again, we listen to their negativity, we listen to their problems and their complaining, but we do not agree with them. We allow them to be negative, and at some point we say, right, we have to be firm. You're not going to draw me into your negativity. Let's try and look at the positive side. Okay, you don't ever agree with them, because then you're going to just you're going to confirm the negative situation, and it might not even be a negative situation. Right, the expert, that guy that knows everything. I know, right? Here we have to be firm and assertive, and by all means do not accuse them ever of being incorrect, all right, because they think they know everything. But you, as the manager, you have to make sure that you know your facts, all right? Because this expert who thinks he knows everything, he's going to try and convince you that he is right. If you know your facts, he's not going to be able to convince you otherwise. But you have to be firm, you have to be assertive, okay? You have to say to him, I hear you, but you know what? I'm still going to do it like this. This is how we are going to do it. All right, even if he says, yes, but this way is better, or we should rather be doing that, we are not going to get caught in their game. We don't accuse them. We don't tell them, oh, Pity, no, you are wrong. I am right, because that's going to cause massive conflict, right? You are firm, you know you're right, but you allow him to think that he's right, but you know your facts, because otherwise that expert is going to convince you that he's right and you are wrong. The quiet person, we are not going to fill their silence with words. All right, so if they are not talking, we also keep quiet. We wait for their response. All right, and if we're waiting for a long time, we prompt them. We said, listen, Pity, I'm still waiting. Pity, what do you think of this? Pity, what is your opinion? Pity, did you hear me? Okay, so we don't fill their silence with words. We don't answer on their behalf. We give them time to think. We wait for their response, but we prompt them. Then we remind them, listen, I'm still waiting for your answer. You still haven't told me what your opinion is on this. But obviously it's very important to restrict the time of the discussion, because if we wait and we wait and we wait for 5 days, we're never going to go home. All right? So it is important that we put a time limit, a deadline to this discussion. The aggressive person, okay, always we say, you walk away from aggressive situation. All right. So when a person is aggressive, they're really, really angry about something that has happened, allow that person the time to speak. Okay, let him talk. Let him blow off steam. You be firm, but you do not attack them. Now, he's already aggressive. The person is already aggressive. So if you now attack him and accuse him of stuff, he's going to attack you back. He's going to make him even more aggressive. The strategy here is to calm him down. All right. So you allow him time to speak. You allow him to shout out his opinion and whatever and blow off steam, but you do not attack him back. You don't react aggressively as well. But very important that you do not allow them to be hostile towards others. Right? It is not okay for this person to take his anger and his aggression out on somebody else at the workplace, because then you've got another grievance now to deal with, okay, in a conflict situation. All right. So you allow him to blow up steam, but you do not allow him to take his anger out on anybody else in the business. Okay, he must sit there and calm down. When he's calmed down, then we can go and confront the other person. All right, otherwise it is going to blow up into a huge aggressive situation. Right, again, remember, you must be able to identify these different personalities from a given scenario. You're going to be given a scenario, and the question is going to be, right, what type of difficult personality is shown here in the scenario, and suggest a strategy. How can we deal with this person? Right, ways to deal with difficult people. Now, we all have to deal with difficult people at some point. First of all, we can get perspective from other people who have experienced the same kind of situation to be able to understand difficult employees. So if you are, for example, an inexperienced manager, if you have to deal with a difficult person in your department, sometimes it helps to speak to other people that might have more experience than what you do, to ask them what would they do in a particular situation. Have they ever faced this situation before? How did they deal with the situation previously? So that we can learn from others. We always have to act proactively if possible, because as a manager, obviously dealing with your personnel, dealing with your staff is your responsibility. So if you already can see, now you're not going to wait for an aggressive person to have a verbal kind of attack. You have to be proactive. Now, if you see, this person is a difficult person, and you see this moving into an aggressive situation, you need to be proactive and you need to take that person out of that situation before it blows up. All right. So you, as a manager, you are supposed to know in your department, you have to be able to identify those different kinds of people. In your department, you identify the aggressive person, you identify the quiet person, so that you can monitor the situation in your office. And if you see a difficult situation approaching, you act proactively. You stop it kind of before it happens. There has to be regular meetings with departmental heads. That should also help to identify problem behavior. So when management meets, they should meet with each different department's head of department to also identify problem behavior. We're not saying gossiping about the staff. That is not what I'm saying. They have to meet together to see if there is a problem, if there is a potential problem in your department. You need to identify it, and that can come up at the meeting with departmental heads, obviously so that a solution can be found. You can ask someone in authority for their input in the situation. So if you as a manager are not sure how to deal with a particular situation, it is always advisable to ask somebody else. Now, you don't have to sit and deal with everything yourself. There will always be somebody that has been in that situation before that can advise you as to what the best course of action is going to be. Very important, as I said, to identify the type of personality which is creating the problem, because as we just saw, different personalities we are going to deal with differently. All right, so we need to identify first, this person that I have to deal with, what kind of personality does this person have? Because that will determine my approach to this person. How am I going to deal with this person is based on the type of personality. Right, very important that we meet privately with difficult employees. We never talk to somebody kind of in front of everybody, right? We don't need any distractions, but we also don't want to embarrass anybody by putting them into an embarrassing situation. Okay, so again, if you feel that somebody didn't follow the procedures, you're not going to storm into the office and start shouting at that person. You're going to say, right, Kwesi, my office, please. And you're going to meet privately with that person where you can discuss the issue privately without the judgment of other employees. Again, make your intentions and the reasons for action known so that it is difficult people can feel at ease. Now you're going to say to him, right, Kwesi is now in your office. You're going to say, Kwesi, I've noticed that you have a little bit of aggressive tendencies. The way that you speak to Sunny might not be acceptable. Let's talk about this. Now, I just want to help you to resolve some of your anger. What are you angry about? So that we can make them feel at ease and we can resolve the situation. Right, the employees should be told exactly what specific behaviors are acceptable by giving them details about what is not acceptable. All right, so I'm going to say, Kwesi, the way that you shouted at Sunny in there now, that is unacceptable. This is a professional environment. We do not talk to each other like that. Please explain to me, why did you feel the need to behave like that? All right, so we make it very clear that X, Y, and Z behavior is unacceptable. We do not accept behavior like that in here. But what made you react like that? They have to be able to explain, but what triggered them? Why did he react like that? All right. Then a deadline should be set for improving bad behavior. Okay, there's like in some cases where people are really aggressive, have really aggressive personalities. We send them for anger management courses, for example. We're going to say, Kwesi, I think you'll benefit We are going to send you on an anger management course, and then we will re-evaluate again in 6 months' time. All right, so there's a deadline. He knows he needs to improve his aggression by a certain date. Otherwise, it just carries on and on and on. Okay, we keep calling him in and nothing changes. The deadline should be discussed with a difficult employee. Obviously, we're not just going to make an autocratic kind of date. We're going to say to him, right, by when? How much time is it going to take, to change your behavior? Do you think 6 months is reasonable? And then obviously we monitor his progress. Not after 6 months are we going to look. Every now and then we look, okay? How's Kwesi interacting now with these people? Is Kwesi still as aggressive? Is he managing his anger? We need to monitor that our interventions actually made a difference. Right, we should get guidelines for improvement. As I said, we need to see the specific strategies, specific things that we expect these people to do. We expect you to do X, Y, and Z, so that he knows also what is expected of him. All right, guidelines. How are we going to improve your anger? How are we going to reduce your anger? How are we going to prevent you from shouting at Sunny again? Very important that we do not judge the person, okay? It's not Kwesi that is the bad person. We want to understand why he's reacting like that so that we can correct the behavior. We're not judging the person. We are trying to understand this person and we are trying to correct his behavior. All right, by understanding what he's feeling, what he's experiencing, and what his situation is. We need to keep communications channels open. Obviously, if employees feel that they can come to management with their grievances, it will not build up and then blow up. All right. If people are communicating well, if the communications channels are open and there's open communications between everybody, when people have a small grievance and they are communicating that, we can solve the small little grievance before it turns into a conflict situation. But communication is key. People need to talk about their feelings. If Kwesi says something, Kwesi drops the F-bomb in the office, and then Sunny says to him, "Yo, Kwesi, really, I don't like it if you're talking like that in front of me. Please don't do that again." Now, instead of keeping quiet and 6 months down the line, she explodes. All right. Very important that there's sound relationships between colleagues. All right. So it's not acceptable to deal with these kind of situations via email or by sending them a message on social media or sending them a WhatsApp message or whatever. We are losing then that personal connection. All right. Grievances and conflict will be reduced if people feel that they have a personal connection with each other. All right. On social media, it is so much easier to gossip and to say really ugly things about people. It is not as easy if you're standing in front of that person and have to say it to his face. And that is how we judge whether you're going to send a message or not, right? Will I say it to his face, yes or no? Okay, so in a business, obviously, that personal connection is very, very important. This is not something that we're going to do over electronic media. A face-to-face conversation is important here. Help difficult employees to be realistic about the task at hand. Remember, unrealistic expectations creates more conflict. All right, so whatever situation we are in, whatever the personal feelings are, we need to be realistic about what needs to happen at work and what is acceptable at work and what is not. Very important that the manager or the person dealing with us is calm and in control of the situation. All right. If Kwesi comes into my office and he's now very aggressive and he screams at me and I scream back, it's going to turn into a screaming match, all right? It is very important that me as the mediator or the manager, I stay calm, I am in control of the situation, I let him scream and whatever blow off steam, and when he's finished, I'm like, yes, okay, are you done now? Let's think about this nicely now, okay? Aggression met with aggression makes everything worse. So the manager needs to stay calm, and he needs to feel that he's in control of the situation, and he needs to calm the other person down as well. We need to treat people with respect, irrespective of whether they are competent or not. Okay? I cannot bring Kwesi into my office and ask him, Kwesi, are you stupid? That's not respectful. All right. If somebody made a mistake and we feel they are incompetent, it is up to us to make sure that that person gets developed. We tell him, listen, Kwesi, you made a big mistake here. Let me show you how it should be done. respectfully. All right, we cannot, in a professional environment, treat each other with disrespect. That is going to cause conflict. Sometimes it may be necessary to ignore a certain person and only monitor that person. Okay, so if it's not a very destructive behavior, so it's not kind of destroying the office environment or the morale of your team, sometimes it's best to just ignore them. All right, so if there's a negative person that is always negative, but other people are ignoring him, he's not really making anybody else negative, he's just sitting being negative on his own, sometimes it's okay. We ignore that negative person and we just make sure, we always monitor that he is still not having a negative impact on other people. The minute that he makes other people negative as well, that is when we have to intervene. All right. But sometimes the best strategy is just to ignore it, sometimes as long as it doesn't have a negative impact on the office environment. Right. As I said earlier, to provide appropriate support program, for example, for an aggressive person, as I said, we can refer him for an anger management course. All right, there's a person that is just over agreeing on everything. We can send him on a course on assertiveness, how to say what you feel, how to be more assertive. Okay, there are different kind of life coaches, kind of courses that people can go to help them to minimize the negative effects of their difficult personality. Now, if we've addressed the areas of weakness, we have identified an aggressive personality, we can send him on an outside support program. Then we get outside experts to come and deal with this person and see if they can help this person move through and improve those weaknesses.